Hey guys, so I have been experimenting with an interesting fossil craft, and since starting this build it changed so many times, so keep in mind this is also not the last version and not the final version. This video is just I guess a result of my testings, and I am testing these kind of weapons. 60% chance for bleeds inflicted with this weapon to deal 100% more damage. Same goes for poison. However, for poison as a Pathfinder, I basically cap it out at 100% chance. So I'm trying to scale both bleed and poison, and I have Crimson Dance. Also, Scourge Arrow has been slightly changed in today's patch. That's why in most of these clips you see me using Scourge Arrow. But that's not the main reason. Maybe let me start from the start. My initial plan was to use either Lacerate or Cleave. With Cleave I could get Fortify, so it would be tankier, but I did not like how Cleave lacked AoE and I wanted to have a bit more range, so I switched to Lacerate. But Lacerate without enough attack speed, it felt kind of clunky and very slow, and still I felt like I still need more AoE. So then I tried Spectral Throw, but I did not have enough single target damage, and I really hate swapping gems just for single target, which I would have to do it because LMP doesn't give any damage for bleed and poison, and I would want to swap it for something else that would actually give damage to poison and bleed. So then I decided to try and use Earthquake, and with Val Earthquake it did feel pretty fun to just run around and see enemies explode after you, and for single target it wasn't that bad, but in the end I just couldn't stack enough stacks. So I went back into using Lacerate, and then we got changes to Scourge Arrow, and I decided to try with bows. Unfortunately, Scourge Arrow changes kind of don't make sense and even makes it worse. If you don't know, with these changes, extra arrows now work with initial shots. So for example, if you got LMP, you would shoot 3 projectiles, but you would still cap out on 5 pods. And extra arrows would not increase amount of pods and would not increase amount of projectiles that pods shoot, at least not from GMP or LMP. And I was hoping that each initial shot would place up to 5 pods, but I guess that would have been way too OP. But now it doesn't really make sense to use LMP or GMP on Scourge Arrow. Also, despite Scourge Arrow converting 60% of physical damage into chaos and reducing my bleed damage, it still kind of makes sense to use it because you are getting up to 150% more damage with hits and ailments per stage. But it seems that projectiles from pods do not gain that more damage with hits and ailments per stage. But I tried to compare it to Rain of Arrows, and I was doing more damage with Scourge Arrow, both with bleed and poison, than with Rain of Arrows. And same for Toxic Rain, I also had more damage with Scourge Arrow, and when I say more damage, I'm only looking at poison DPS and bleed DPS. Because Rain of Arrows, Toxic Rain and Scourge Arrow can hit multiple times with arrows. So you don't really need to argue that one hits more times than other. And I kind of like the Scourge Arrow playstyle. And for the moment, my issue is single target. I'm gonna show you a series of clips basically testing my damage. And me trying to figure out what's better set up. And I like testing damage against Arid Lake boss, because you can enrage it, making it much tankier. So in the first clip you see me using an axe and using Lacerate. This was before I converted into bow build, and it took me about 11 seconds to deal with this boss. In the next example, I was trying to use LMP for Scourge Arrow. This is after the Scourge Arrow changes. I don't know why did I think that is gonna be any good damage, and it took me 16 seconds. And then I tried to replace LMP with I can't remember which other gem. Basically I wasn't using LMP anymore, and it took me 11 seconds. Then I also tried Rain of Arrows. It took me 13 seconds. Of course there may be some fluctuation because of RNG. And then after a couple more levels and couple more changes to my items, I did try to compare Toxic Rain and Scourge Arrow. So while Toxic Rain has lower DPS with bleed and poison, but it also creates pots that do damage over time. And I defeated this boss in 10 seconds. And then switched back to Scourge Arrow, and I managed to do it in 11 seconds again. I think the difference may have been because of virulence stacks and my agony minion damage, because with Toxic Rain it was easier to apply more poison stacks and increase the virulence stacks, increasing the agony minion damage, and obviously applying more poison stacks. Also I did another testing with Scourge Arrow to see if it is better to charge more stages or release at one stage, and I was basically releasing at one stage, and it took me like 3 seconds more. Obviously these testing results are not very accurate and I didn't run that many maps, but it does seem like for single target Toxic Rain is slightly better. However, for clear speed I do enjoy using Scourge Arrow way more. And on top of that I can still use Toxic Rain with Mirage Archer, increased duration and withering support. All these testings were done on 5 link. I'm currently 82, so I still have room to improve, and these are my items. I think for body armor it's very important for this build to recover life on kill, since my leech is kind of almost useless and I don't really have life on hit. So this body armor for now works very well. Then have my feet like gloves for that delicious popping sound. Minion damage helmet because I don't have enough intelligence for that high level minion damage. And it is a pseudo 5 link for both my heralds linked with maim and enlighten. But enlighten at this point is not really needed. I was previously using withering instead of maim, which has higher mana multiplier. And for quiver I am experimenting with Maloney's Nightfall. It is both offensive and defensive quiver. Later on I would really like to include aspect of the spider into this build and hopefully get a 6 link body armor, but for now my Scourge Arrow is linked with Unbound Ailments, Vicious Projectiles, Deadly Ailments and Chance to Bleed. And Toxic Rain is linked with Mirage Archer, Increased Duration and Withering Touch. As for the passive skill tree, it looks like a big mess. I did mess a bit with, well, a lot with path of building and try to compare passive skill tree this with a passive skill tree where I would not go for Spiritual Aid minion node and I would basically stop at Life Wheel near the Iron Grip and then focus more on my own bleed and poison damage and going more towards the shadow area. But the difference in poison and bleed DPS was very minimal. So I think I will not be refining my passive skill tree and will keep it as it is. Obviously I will level up more and improve it. Oh, you probably noticed that I only have 1 life flask. And that's very unusual for me. And you know I really kind of hate relying on flasks. But Pathfinder makes it very relaxing because you don't need to worry too much about your flask charges. You can just keep spamming it. You just need to worry about a bit more against bosses. So I guess I'm trying new things and trying to stop being so stubborn. And we'll see how this build is gonna work later on. So that's about all for now. Thank you for watching and see you soon.
My